Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to call the regular meeting of May 24th, 2016 to order. And could I have roll call, please?
Chairman Beniak.
Here.
Legislator Duchessis.
Here.
Legislator Wheeler. Here. Legislator Isabel.
Here.
Legislator Patel.
Present.
Legislator Kelly.
Present.
Legislator Quackenbush.
Present.
Legislator Diamond.
Present.
Legislator White.
Present.
Okay, could we please stand to salute the flag, and would Legislator Wheeler lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And could we remain standing for a moment of silence, please? Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll have public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Okay, would you state your name?
Yes. Okay. John's going to go first.
Okay.
My name is Don Nadler. I'm president of Nadler Brothers Incorporated. We own land in the town of Florida, which is a potential site for solar. And I'd just like to give you a little bit of background on that. Borrego first approached us a few years ago about the idea of doing solar on our property. And their original design was going to be very close to the thruway exit. We asked them to redo those plans and put it on the far south side of our property so that it would be unobtrusive. And we worked through that. We've had meetings with the town. The town was almost ready to listen to our proposed plans, and then they decided to go into a moratorium until they developed their own solar rules and regulations. That caused about a 5-month delay in the project. When the new regulations came out, Borrego had to go back and re-engineer the entire project because the setback was further than we thought it would be, and several other things impacted the project. So we're now, instead of going to the board in January or February, we are hoping to go to the board in June or July. Obviously, we have not met the threshold for being grandfathered based on what is proposed in the legislation for tonight. However, we do have a power purchase agreement with SUNY Poly. The plans have been fairly well developed and are ready to be presented. And I think at this point, I would like to ask that if you could modify the proposal to include any project that has a power purchase agreement and a NYSERDA agreement in place that would save our project. Now the project, I can't give you all of the figures, and I can only speak for our project, but in our project, based on the sales of 4% that would go to Montgomery County, they're looking at $448,000 that would be spent in sales tax money that would come to the county within a year or 18 months after the project started. If you were to vote and my project was deleted from the legislation, Borrego has told me from the start that any tax that would be added on would kill the project. So my project would be eliminated, and the county on my project alone would lose $448,000 in sales tax. Borrego, I believe, when they did the original proposal to me, was under the assumption that several things would occur. The tax credit would remain, they would be able to get NYSERDA incentives, and there would be no tax. They told me from the first day that if any tax were to be applied, that would probably be a deal breaker. But everything has been based on that assumption, and I think if we're able to do any more projects, and I don't want to speak for it, but I'm having discussions with them, if they were to do any more projects in the county from now on, they would build that into their projections. but having not done so, being a 2-year or more project that's this close to conclusion, to lose that much tax money by not grandfathering my project with Borrego into the town of Florida would be detrimental to the county. Thank you very much.
So I am with Borrego. I'm Patty Smith. I'm a project developer. I believe this letter was distributed to you today, so I'm just going to touch on the points. So yes, we recently learned that you're thinking about adopting a pilot. Right now, we have 3 solar projects currently in development in Montgomery County. These solar projects have been in development for 18 months. And yes, we have power purchase agreements for all 3 of them, both with the City of Amsterdam and with SUNY College. The power purchase agreements were negotiated based off of the assumption of a 15-year tax exemption that was in place. So yes, we have sort of our price that we're going to be receiving from the city and from SUNY, and any increase will potentially impact 2 of the projects which have not met the threshold yet. So the additional tax burden to the county is proposing will negatively impact the financial viability of our projects under development and prevent them from moving forward. We ask that the bar for projects be considered underway be modified from what is proposed, a site plan approval or building permit in place, to an executed PPA and an NYSERDA incentive award, which these projects have. So there's a table on the letter there that outlines these 3 projects. One is this Route 67 Amsterdam. Dawn's here is the Mineville Road, Florida one, and then the 3rd one is Log City Road, Amsterdam. So the last 2 projects in that table will not go forward if this pilot is put in place. So going back to the sales tax, one of the comments I saw in the pilot proposed was that the county will not receive any tax benefit from these types of projects. And there is a 4% sales tax that will be applied to installation and labor. And so we have put our estimated system costs for each of these projects on the table. And then we put our estimated sales tax that we will pay next year to the county at a 4% rate, which comes out to about $1 million. One of the other things I noticed in the pilot, or the proposed pilot, is no jobs. And yes, I agree that once these systems are in place, there's no mechanical moving parts. It's not like a gas-fired plant or a coal plant or something like that. But the jobs that are created through the construction are not insignificant. So what we did here is that we have a project ongoing right now in upstate New York. It's approximately 6 megawatts. And this is the breakdown of the hours of the jobs created. And this project's about 80 to 90% complete right now. So we do use local contractors for the majority of the installations. And then there is one sort of specialty racking contractor that will come in. And then they will have local people staying in the towns and staying at hotels and all that kind of stuff. So in addition, I'm sort of a product of, I'm a recent hire to Borrego. Borrego is growing. We are looking at opening up an office in Albany, and we do now have, half a dozen local New York State employees, and we're looking to grow our office or create an office based out of Albany that will be supporting these types of projects and projects going forward. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's sort of where we're at. And yeah, if you have any questions. Yeah.
I think one of the problems that we're having here is that were really not clear with respect to the sales tax issue. So by way of comparison, on the project that you just mentioned that is 80% complete, how much sales tax was paid on that?
I don't know actually the county that one was in, that's not my project. I can get you, actually before this meeting ends, which county it is in. I can get what county that project that I'm referring to, which isn't my project. I can get that to you by the end of the meeting. But it will be, I don't know if you guys got this.
Yeah, my problem is that the sheet talks about retail sales and installation. That's why we're not clear.
Right.
And that's why I asked you, it would be helpful if I knew how much sales tax you paid on an ongoing project, then I could actually see that sales tax is being paid.
So we have 40 megawatts of projects underway in New York State, either completed or in some portion of development right now. And on all of those projects, we have paid for the full, paid this tax rate on the installation cost. But yes, I can get you the actual number based off of like that we have paid on, this example project, just to confirm. But yeah, this is not unclear for us as in our experience in New York that it is applied for the full installation cost and labor, regardless of whether or not the equipment was bought in the county. I think that was one of the nuances that was being discussed today too, is whether or not the 4% rate would be applied to equipment that was sourced outside of the county, and it is. And I mean, if there's still questions about it, I feel like.
Well, one question
It's a bit
remains. I
vague.
asked the question, I didn't really get an answer to it. I don't know the amount that was paid, so. I'm not looking to generate questions, I'm looking for an answer to the one I asked.
Yeah, can I have like, I don't know, 10 minutes and I will get you an answer to it? Yeah.
It's not up to me, but I'm asking, just looking for that information. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can just email somebody and they'll be able to pull that up for me, no problem.
Okay, Tom and then Bob.
I'm just wondering, there's information that we're trying to gain here, this new requested, and I heard about maybe some amendments that would like to be made. How time sensitive is this?
So one of the projects already has a site permit, so we're sort of under the threshold, so that one's past the threshold, so that project's a go. The other one is almost ready for a site permit, ready to go. There's John's is probably the furthest out, and it's probably we're looking to file around June.
But waiting a month isn't going to kill the project.
No. No, in fact, that I feel like that will, we're going to work very hard to get our site permit filed by then. And we can confirm, I can even get the sales tax number on multiple projects as well.
Okay, Bob.
Just to follow up on Legislator Duchesse's question, I think just to clarify, I think what we're looking to see is that indeed there was an amount that was paid, not projected to be paid. In other words, anybody can, nothing against you, but anybody can come up and say to us, look, you're going to give a check for $400,000 for sales tax. But I think I'd feel much more comfortable if we knew that it's the policy of your company that they've already accepted that, and you can show proof that they've already indeed paid that.
I can definitely get you that information. I just don't have it on me right this second. Yeah.
Okay, Martin, then the county executive.
But no projects in Montgomery County are into the stage where you've paid sales tax?
No.
Okay, Ben.
Okay, so I have a few questions. You just said that the sales tax is related to the installation and labor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so of the over $20 million that are the estimated system cost, what is the amount of equipment versus the installation and labor? Because my question is the equipment in fact sales tax, is it exempt from sales tax?
It is not exempt.
It is not, because my reading of the law that was provided, we went back and looked it up, and my understanding is that it would be exempt.
Right, and so I think there was a discussion that happened between, I think yourself and my boss, and the city of Amsterdam.
Well, no, my question was...
With this, but I think what your point, or what was raised here is if we can show that this is the rate that we have paid based off of the cost of a project, then that will put that issue to bed. So I feel like that is something that could be an easy solution.
Okay, well, I'm very interested in that because, and Bill will speak a little bit to that maybe on the resolution, but our reading of the law would mean that it looks like that's not, it is exempt for the equipment cost. And if that is the case, I would imagine the equipment cost for these projects would be significant and significantly lower what the sales tax that the county would receive. And even just for the legislature, even if it was the estimated $1 million, that is a one-shot revenue over the course of 15 years. There is no reoccurring revenue here. And we're working on projects in the county with, say, for example, the Dollar General project, where a company is looking to move in here and create 550 permanent jobs, and they're going to pay more taxes than a solar field. I have a hard time justifying that to the other taxpayers in this county that are dealing with, obviously, us trying to hold the line on taxes with the mandates and the rising costs, yet, we have these properties going up and are tax-free. Now, with that said, I do understand and respect the fact that there has been, these projects have been in the work for some time, and you forecasted things based on what the certain situation was. I get that, but it would be very concerning to me if this estimate was off based on the equipment, because that would be a big red flag for me. And maybe Bill can talk a little bit about his look into the sales tax law. You want to talk a little bit about it?
With the permission of the chair?
Yes.
Yeah. Take a look at the letter here. The part of the guidance document that you cited from State Tax and Finance, 718 CS, really has to do with stuff where somebody is selling a solar system to somebody else. Really. So there's a really very concerned about this. The operative part of the sales tax law that applies to this is actually publication 852, and this is, we've talked to a couple of people about this today. This talks about equipment that's used in the production of things. For instance, when we have manufacturers that buy equipment, they don't pay sales tax. This specifically talks about the exemptions for the generation of electricity and so forth. So out of that $25 million, I'm not sure how the sales tax would be applied to labor and stuff. I'm not sure how that works. Sometimes it's applied, sometimes it isn't. But I would think that the preponderance of that cost would be in equipment, not in installation, just based upon the amount of people. You have just 4 people working there, so they wouldn't be paid.
This only, sorry, just to clarify, that's only 4 people in New York State, and this office just was opening 2 years ago. So we actually have, it's quite a large company based out of Boston and Oakland.
How much of that $25 million would be equipment costs, which appears from everything we've talked about and heard, exempt?
Right, and so what I would like to go back to is that our position is it is not exempt. In all of our New York State projects, we have accounted for and plan to pay the full 4% on the installation and equipment costs in its entirety. We can provide some, with specifics on projects that have been put in place. And we'd because I feel like we're just going around in circles as to whether or not this is going to apply to equipment or not. Our position is that it does. And I feel like there might be some confusion.
Well, the state law obviously says that it doesn't apply to equipment. Whether you enter into an independent contract to allow it to apply here, that's okay. And I'm not speaking for the legislature. but the state law certainly doesn't require you to pay sales tax.
Okay, our position is that state law does require us to pay. So, I feel like we've been, again, going back and forth.
Mr. Chair, I just did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go.
And just one more thing, we are not against pilots. We have done projects in counties with pilots. It's just the fact that these projects have a negotiated PPA, power purchase agreement, in place already, and it will jeopardize them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Don, you'd like to speak again?
Well, I agree that $1 million potential taxes on one shot is a small figure. You have two options. You either get the $1 million or the project's tank and you get nothing. So, to me, the obvious answer is try to get the $1 million.
One last point, I'll just say to that. I don't think it's that simple, and I certainly respect that, you know, these are ongoing projects. Like I said, my position from the beginning is that we grandfather in ongoing projects. But I can tell you that the county has been barraged with solar companies looking to do business in this county, and I don't think this is going to would be the end of solar in Montgomery County by any stretch of the imagination.
The end of these projects, including the one for the city of Beaches.
But like I said, I believe they should be grandfathered in. I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, we got to look out for the taxpayers.
That was our only concern, based on where we stand now with two of those projects, based on the language that's in the proposal, they would not be grandfathered in. So your request was that we be allowed to be grandfathered.
Okay, thank you. On to the presentation. I have Sarah Kramer from the Catholic Charities here to speak.
I'm Sarah Kramer from Catholic Charities. I'm a program coordinator on the Advancing Tobacco-Free Communities Grant, which is funded by the New York State Department of Health Bureau Tobacco Control Program. I work with youth, businesses, schools, and municipalities in our community to help create tobacco-free norms. I'm just going to give you a brief picture of the health status and contributing factors in Montgomery County, and then I'm going to turn it over to my counterparts from American Heart and American Cancer Society to give you some information about Tobacco 21 and the evidence that supports it. The county has the geographic factors which contribute to the health of residents. There's a substantial portion of the population that is low socioeconomic status. These residents are less likely to have knowledge of health issues and access to the resources that promote health and prevent disease. The geography of Montgomery County also contributes to health status. It's a rural county with low population density. There are a limited number of full-service grocery stores, exercise and recreational facilities, and healthcare providers. Residents also have to travel longer distances to get resources that don't exist, and there's virtually no public transportation. Montgomery County has the highest unemployment rate of the surrounding counties at 8.7%. 16.3% of the population is below the poverty level, and in the city of Amsterdam, that number is even higher at 19.9%, and both are higher than the state poverty level of 14.5%. Also, the number of children living below the poverty line is 25.8%, which is also higher than the state level. The percentage of obesity among youth and children is again higher than the state level, and our surrounding counties at 21.2%. There are also elevated rates of lung and bronchus cancer in the county, and that could be due to the fact that we have high smoking rates in our adult smokers. The state rate in New York State, adult smokers is only 14.4%, which is fairly low. But here in Montgomery County, our rate is actually 23.4% adult smokers. And when we surveyed youth, nearly 30% of 9th and 10th grade students report smoking, and that rate increases to nearly 35% of 11th and 12th graders. And all these factors contribute to the health status of the residents of Montgomery County. And I'm now going to turn it over to Kristen. And Scott. You want to go first? Okay. We talk about Tobacco 21, raising the legal age to purchase tobacco.
Great. Yeah. So thanks for having me tonight. My name is Scott Hobson. I'm the grassroots manager for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. And the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, we're the nonpartisan advocacy affiliate of the American Cancer Society. We are all about enacting evidence-based policies to reduce the burden of cancer across America. So, just to touch on what we're talking about tonight, we're really looking, we're really sort of asking or requesting to be, have consideration of a policy to raise the age for legal purchase of tobacco products to 21 from 18. This would include all tobacco-related products, as well as e-cigarettes. So, I have some fairly extensive comments, and out of respect for all of you and everybody else in this room, I'm just gonna hit on the main points because I certainly don't want to keep this here until midnight or later. But I think nobody here would be surprised to know that cancer is the second leading killer in America. Here in New York, about 110,000 people this year will be diagnosed with cancer, and of that, about 34,000 of them will die. In terms of mortality overall, lung cancer, bronchial cancer is the top killer. So this is obviously, I don't think this is news to anybody, but it really underscores how important this issue is. So the use of tobacco products is the #1 preventable cause of death in America. About 480,000 people a year die from the use of tobacco products. So again, it's certainly probably not surprising to all of us, but it's a very important public health issue. What's significant about Tobacco 21, and what's important about looking at raising the age from 18 to 21, is that about 95% of adults who smoke started before the age of 21. It's a major percentage, a large proportion of people start early. And about 100%, 99 to 100% of people start before the age of 26. So again, it's very important to get this when people are when they're young. It's particularly important because the time period, between age 18 to the mid-20s is when the brain is really developing. I mean, we have scientific evidence that shows this. We know that developing brains are more susceptible to things like addiction to nicotine and other substances. So this is why the 18 to 21 population is such a critical target for these policies. So to date, about 145 localities in 10 states have raised the age for tobacco purchase from 18 to 21, and we're hoping that Montgomery County will be the 146th or 7th to do that. Just a few weeks ago, Chautauqua County passed this into law. Albany County is currently considering this proposal. It passed the legislature. It is awaiting signature by the county executive. And New York City also passed this into law. So this is certainly a trend that we're seeing across the nation and across the state. And so I just want to quickly touch on one of the more prevalent arguments. Certainly, I think there are people will make arguments against this policy. But the big one really is economic impact. Right? We're expecting people to say that this is going to have an economic impact on convenience stores, on small businesses. But when you really look at the very small subset of sales, we're talking about 2% of total cigarette sales impacted by this. So it's a pretty small amount. There's pretty broad public support for this, and I think what's most striking and what's most telling is there's very broad public support among smokers, current smokers. 70% of current smokers support raising the age from 18 to 21. And among the general population of adults, it's 75%. So these are very, generally speaking, very popular. It's a very popular proposal among voters. So just the bottom line, ACS Cancer Action Network, we support raising the age from 18 to 21, and I'm happy to take any questions that any of you may have on that.
Barbara?
Oh, sorry.
It's not really a question, but I think that this is a great idea. The diseases that come from smoking are, we know that they're it's not just cancer, it's COPD. But I would support this. So I think that it's great. Thank you for coming and speaking on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Roy?
I agree with all your information. I wondered why it wouldn't be more of a state decision than a county decision.
Sure, that's a great question. I think, this is really how we build momentum for a change on the state level. It's funny, it's interesting you would say that because we go to the state, if we go to the state, they say, well, why don't you do this on the county level first? But the bottom line is frankly, it can be a little bit easier to do this in small pieces until you reach sort of a critical tipping point. And that's what, hopefully we're going to start to see. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
No more questions tonight?
Yeah.
Save them for him.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
My name is Kristen Salvi. I'm the Government Relations Director for the American Heart Association in New York State. To piggyback off of some of the stats that Scott had said, and Sarah as well, New York State has continuously led the pursuit in tobacco control programs, but there's still some alarming stats. Over 10,000 students and youth become daily new smokers, and that's in New York State. And also 73,000 New York State high school students currently smoke. And that's a stat that came right from the Department of Health. So those two statistics alone are very alarming. And specifically the numbers that Sarah had said, in Montgomery County, 23% of adults are smoking, which is significantly higher than the state average. In New York State alone, more than 500,000 New Yorkers are currently living with a smoking-related illness. This costs over $8 billion annually in healthcare expenditures related to these tobacco-related illnesses. There's been very strong scientific evidence behind this. The Institute of Medicine, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, did a study in 2015. Their study recommended raising the tobacco sale age, and that it would significantly reduce the number of teens and young adults who start smoking. And so much so that in 2015 also Hawaii became the first state to pass a statewide initiative. California just recently passed it. New York City, Suffolk County, Boston, Chicago, all of these municipalities have all taken care of it because of the issue is so important. One major concept that we go around and around about is the military argument. And I can promise you that no one has been more difficult to work with than my father because he's retired Army, and so it's been like Sunday dinners arguing over why this would be an important initiative. And his thinking at the beginning of this last year was that, if you're 18, you have the right to go fight in a war, you have the right to smoke a cigarette. Unfortunately, things have changed to the point where smoking is now an addiction and a societal burden. It's not really a right anymore. I mean, we're actually promoting addiction by doing that. Back in his day, he fought in Vietnam and Iraq, and they used to, when he was in Vietnam, they used to give cigarettes in their rations. Yeah, and that he smoked in Vietnam. Like, I've heard this a million times, and that was just sort of the norm then. And unfortunately now, the norms have changed. This is really something that we need to do if we want to curb these tobacco-related illnesses, these healthcare expenditures, and if we want to save lives. Any questions? Again, Scott will answer any questions.
That's it? Okay, very good, thank you. And last, Toga?
First, I want to apologize for my late arrival. I was traveling for work today. Had some mishaps. Some of you at the Economic Development meeting heard a lot of what I have to say, and I hope you all got the attachments. We had left some attachments for you. Well, what I'll do is I'll quickly kind of go through everything, and then if anybody has any questions, if that's all right, I'll come back. But I wanted to start off with the West Hill School. As I mentioned at that meeting, we are planning to pay off the tax assessment on that property. And, as I think many of you know, we had been working with the village and the county to try and figure something out, but now that we weren't able to, we plan to pay it, and we will pay it in full. Our plan is to pay it by the 31st, and we're on track to do that. Also, we had provided some handouts about the Wagner House and Palatine Bridge, the old Masonic Temple, 51 Mohawk Street in Fort Plain, and 23 Center Street in Fort Plain, which are 3 buildings that are up for tax foreclosure. In the case of the Wagner House, Palatine Bridge had come to us and asked us to give them some numbers for demolition, if we would help them with that. We've done 7 deconstructions where we've taken buildings apart, sold the pieces to try and keep the cost down. So I know they also contacted Paul, I think, with the DPW, the county DPW, about helping with that, the demolition team. But, we just wanted you to be aware of it. And that's a prorated number on that quote. So if we're able to reduce the costs at all by any amount, we plan to do that, pass that on to the village of Palatine Bridge, if they decide to go with us. In the case of 51 Mohawk Street and 23 Center Street in Fort Plain, our concern with those 2 buildings is that they are a critical safety issue, and they are not something that we believe should be in the auction. We got the structural engineer assessment because we know in both cases in 51 Mohawk Street, and I put pictures in the packet, the old Masonic Temple, the roof was ripped off in a windstorm last August. So we went up at that time, the owner walked away from the building and left the area. We went up and tarped the roof so that the building would not be taking on water. There's actually like 6 or 7 large tarps up there. In winter, that was ripped off. We went up and we tarped it a second time. But already there's serious water damage happening, and there's also some structural damage. If you read that structural engineer's report, which we spent our own money, about $1,000, to get those done, you'll see that there's serious issues, and they said it may not survive if something isn't done. With 23 Center Street, the issue there is that building went through the flood, as did the 51 Mohawk, but the foundation walls are collapsing in, and there's some pictures of that. He also discusses what will happen if those issues aren't addressed. And one of the options we are looking at is taking the building down and using it as parking if we can't save it. But our concern is putting those out into the regular auction process where somebody may come in thinking it's a flip or something where they're just going to go in and do something with those buildings. It's not going to be, there needs to be a serious investment in either case, and we'd be willing to commit to that. So aside from that, moving from the Mohawk Valley Collective to the Regional Land Bank, which is another one of the things we talked about at the Economic Development meeting, I just wanted to give an update first that Schoharie County has signed the application and it has gone into ESD. But at this point, we've talked with ESD already several times this week, and they have tentatively said that our resolutions look good and our IGAs look good. And they want us to go back now to the FGUs, which would be the counties, and the cities of Johnstown, Rome, and Utica, and work with them to get those resolutions in committee and reviewed to see how people felt about this. So I wanted to see if in June, maybe we could get into one of the committee meetings, to look at this further, maybe intergovernmental or economic development, as the legislature sees fit. But just in general, for those of you that weren't there, we've been working through the different foreclosing governmental units in the area and have now 7 out of the 9 in the Mohawk Valley Red Sea, which is the economic development district area. And the 2, we're expecting a vote from Oneida in June. At their meeting, they tentatively passed a committee, And we're going to go back to Fulton, which we're still working with. We've got Loversville and we've got Johnstown on board, and we're going to go back to the full Fulton. But again, to work on similar projects to what the MVC is doing, really these white elephant projects, which doesn't pay for municipalities to work on. It doesn't pay for private. There are these properties that the private commercial developers aren't interested in because they're too far gone. They have too serious issues, and they need some sort of significant investment. So that's really the hope, is to focus on those types of projects. So I can answer any questions if you have any or anything.
I'd just like to add, in terms of those, the two properties that engineering reports were submitted at Economic Development, I've had a chance to walk around the properties with Hogan, and I would concur that they are at the point of, if they don't find a owner that's going to make some emergency stabilization investments, I think they would most likely, we'd be seeing them next time around like the Wagner House as a heap instead of a structure, and at that point it just becomes exponentially more difficult to find somebody to go and remediate the site. So I think the thought of passing these properties into the hands of a group that has a proven track record of stabilizing and remediating sites and doing it with a sustainable mindset, I think that would be a great solution, opposed to sending them through the auction cycle where we probably all know where they'll end up.
Back to us, if you're still standing.
And if not, they probably will too.
And I also wanted to add, I've sent out the draft IGA resolutions and things to different members. I can send them out to Cheryl, to anyone to forward on. Anybody who wants to take a look at them, just let me know. Or hard copies, whatever's easiest, so, for the land bank material.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. If it's all right with the board, I'd like to move the presentation of a proclamation to the end of the meeting. Okay? And so if there's no objections, I'll move on to communications.